Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Hello, and I am so excited to welcome January Donovan today to the Positively Healthy Mom. So, hello January, how are you today?
I am so well. We made it. We're trying to fix our schedule, but we made it, and I'm so grateful to be here and just
Oh,
honored.
good.
But thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a self-worth coach and founder of the Women's School, tell us how you got into this work.
Oh gosh. So the short of it is that my wound became the compass to my work and contribution. And what I mean by that is that I suffered as a woman because I just didn't know how. I didn't know how to make friendships. I didn't know how to know my value. I didn't know how to manage my mind, my emotion. And so I, I had great parents, but they were immigrant parents. And I think our world massively shifted in the last 100 years, more so 50 years, that most of us are just trying to figure out as we go. And so I kind of came to a point in my life where I'm like, I don't like who I am. And that was my freshman year in college. And I just was, the word just disgusted myself. And I met a mentor in college, my freshman year, my first month. And her name was Elena. I talked about this in her school. And she said, January, what kind of woman do you want to be? And I remember laughing at her. And I was like, you have no choice. It's like, yes, you do. Let's design you. And so I met with her every single month, almost, for 3.5 years. She gave me homework. She trained me with mindset and skill sets. She didn't really realize it, but I was so hungry that I showed up. She would say, give me 10. I'll show up with 30. My first homework was to get rid of comparison and competition because I was lonely and I wanted quality
Oh,
friends.
yeah.
My second homework was to build a morning routine so I could prepare and meditate and plan my morning at 4:30 in the morning. My third homework was to make my bed, so I was accomplished before I even made my day. So I had homework all throughout, and that changed my life profoundly. To a point in college, I started training women some of these skill set, and I just kind of did it. I did it for free for 15 years, and didn't charge a dime. I just believed in it so much. I would do training on skills because where do you go to learn pivoting skills, decision making, communicating yourself effectively? I mean, we have divorce rate of what, 55%, and we don't teach our communication is 77% words, 38% tonality, and 55% body language. I mean, it's outright robbery what we're doing to women right now. And so I just sort of used my own wounds, my own experience, and my own training. And 4 years ago, roughly, we launched the Women's School because my husband said, Junior, do you want to reach thousands or millions? And I was just passionate about it. I did it with all, I had 4 kids under four, like you, and then I just kept training women. And so I think there was just a hunger for depth and I think for deep training. And really boils down to really is that in the last 150 years, roughly, we've been fighting in the West for women's freedom, the freedom to choose,
Mm-hmm.
the freedom to be part of the marketplace, the freedom to be able to work. But I think that what we have right now is data that in spite of all the freedom we have, women are not free. As a matter of fact, they're more enslaved, they're more anxious, stressed, burnt out, unfulfilled with their life. And so now we have data where 1800 years ago, that's not the woman we're signing up for. And now there's a woman that feels like she can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, without any sense of actually kind of understanding who she is. And so it kind of took me to this work of we need to reclaim womanhood in context of modern society, take all the good that we've learned from 1800s, all the history of women, the feminist movement, and cast a new vision of what it means to be a woman, and then let's train her. So
Yeah.
that's where I came to this work.
That's amazing. And it feels like we're getting so many mixed messages as far as what the ideal woman is and how we need to show up in this world. And it can be overwhelming. So what do you think are the biggest sources of overwhelm for moms today?
I think underskilled, bottom line, overwhelm equals underskilled. And let me just kind of just break that down. If you're a mother and you've never been taught or trained, and not when I say not here podcast, neurologically wired in the 95% of our brain to manage your mind, manage your emotion, say no to yourself, honor your word, build a routine, clean your house, not and effectively, not for all day. Um, all these are skill set that are actually intertwined together. So let me give you an example. When I teach time management, I can't even teach time management without first teaching mind management, the ability to honor our word, the ability to say no to ourselves, the ability to follow through. All of those skills hinges on our time management skills. So these skill set, we teach mindset and skill set needs to be introduced in the woman because we are overwhelmed because we are underskilled. But here's the worst part, see, Lauren. Women are blamed and shamed for the choices nobody ever taught them how to make. Because who taught you any of this? Where do you go as a mother to learn a rhythm of life that honors your routine? Where do you go to know that your value is not contingent on your child's performance? That's a skill.
Right.
Where do you know how to make sure that you make time for yourself, receptivity, to receive training, to receive growth, to just make time to shower? All of these are so crucial. It's non negotiable. Where if you don't have mind management skills or emotional command, your toddler cries, you're going to cry with her, as opposed to actually helping her work through her own emotion and not be a victim of her emotion and also not you being victim by her emotion. All of these skills to me is a reason why mother has become hard, chaotic, stressful, and now we falsely advertise motherhood as a place where it's just hard. Or is it that there's hard moments because we're underskilled, but it is life-giving? Like the most important job in the world, the most life-giving job in the world. We have now labeled it, conditioned a whole generation to believe that it's what sucks the life out of a woman.
Mm,
I think that
mhm,
conditioning is causing people to not want to have children, to resent motherhood. But here's the thing, how many of us are called to be mothers, but not just called to be mothers, that actually motherhood is actually the place that draws greater fulfillment, that actually allows us to see a capacity we've never seen is possible. And so I think there's a robbery that is leading to a lack of fulfillment in motherhood because we've labeled motherhood as hard. And I don't think to a fault to our own, I think society
right.
is not preparing us enough. I mean, think about this. There's no more home economics. When I was in school, they had home economics. Men and both girls and boys, we had to learn how to cook, prepare school. And this idea right now, I was just doing a training on this, and every single time I talk about the importance of kitchen skills in context of health skills. Like you cannot be healthy if you don't know how to clean a kitchen efficiently and effectively. Because so much of our health issue is obviously reading labels, but it's not just what you eat, it's managing your mind. How do you manage your mind if you feel like you can't clean your kitchen because it's overwhelming to make a meal, to clean it effectively? I mean, I time my children when they clean the island. I'm like, there's 3 minutes, it's a 3-part process. It's not half an hour. I have like a timer on my fridge. Like we don't know all of this. But we are expected to. That's the problem. Just because we are born a woman, that doesn't mean we know how to be one. We no longer have our mothers, our grandmothers, our aunt. We had the infrastructure eight in the 1800s where we lived in a family nucleus that actually said, "Oh, your grandmother says this is how you cook." But not only that, we are distracted because we have our phones and we're not learning through osmosis anymore. We are literally learning through TikTok. And so,
Yeah.
we're not actually um, handing over the skills that I think are necessary in a world that's dramatically shifted. But more importantly, our parents could not teach us in a world how would they even know how to manage Instagram or TikTok, where they didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the context of our world that's massively shifted, the lack of skill training, and I think the third part is women today are devalued. And if you ask yourself, what do we revere in our culture today? Power, what we call in a woman's school power, the poisonous speak poisons her self-worth, power, possession, perfection, popularity, positions. And we know this because women would treat women who have, a million followers differently than somebody who's 10 followers. Or when somebody says they're a millionaire to somebody who is working, as a teacher. But we do it so subconsciously. It's
Yeah.
automatic. It's
Yeah.
habitual because the 95% of our brain has been conditioned from a very early age to think you compete, you compare, your value is based on your grades. What makes you valuable is what school you go to. Your body is your worth. How many guys like you, how popular you are. All this is so systemic. And we are feeling all the pain of being poisoned, our self worth being poisoned because we have no language to refute it because there's no training. And so we're all
Yeah.
swimming in the same muck.
Mm, wow. That's very powerful. And it almost magnifies to me or clarifies the level of problem that we're actually
Yeah.
dealing with. You know, it's I don't think we spend our days thinking about this very consciously. You're right. And so what does that do to a woman's self image? You know, we are constantly beating ourselves up, feeling like we're not good enough, you know, as women, as mothers, as wives, as partners, as, you know, anything. So it's like, how do we build on the inside in order to feel good enough and feel worthy?
Yes. So I think it's a two-part question. What is it doing with the woman's self-image? It makes them feel like they're not valuable. It's not even just enough. They're not significant. So what happens when women don't feel they're valuable? Then they live to prove themselves, prove to their boss, prove to their children, instead of actually knowing that their value is unconditional. It doesn't change. Nothing changes it. Not your children's failure, how much money you make, right? So what it's making to women's self-image, it's making conditional. So they're literally running a rat race of proving and pleasing. It's happening all subconsciously. We don't even have language to police it. So that's what's happening, which then causes anger, anxiety, numbing. Now we've got addiction. And not only do we have addiction that we're literally kind of just filling ourselves with Netflix or binging on other things that are unfulfilling, we're searching for depth. So I think what's happening is that what Thoreau said, men and women are living lives of quiet desperation. I think that's where we are. And data tells us that because the antidepressant number, the anxiety, the depression, all that is skyrocketing. So what's the solution? Well, we can't solve the politics around us. I think we can't see what's happening. I think it needs to be a grassroots effort and movement towards interior training. And that's really what we offer in the school is that we have to shift the mindset and introduce skill training in our culture. But how does that happen? I think we need to shift the conditioning of women to say every woman needs training. Like your life is hard when you're undertrained. And that a life without training eventually becomes leads to anxiety, depression, stress, everything, overwhelm, burnout, motherhood, anything. So to me, the antidote is that every woman makes a choice to go into a journey of training. Athletes train. They have coaches, they have a community, they have classes. They like we need to reshift women's perception that we are to train for life, for our life. And that it never ends. Why? Because I have 8 children. I need new skills in context of 8 children, not building a business. Like I need to learn boundaries in a different way. It's not just even boundaries now, it's boundaries in context of my current season of our life. So to me, that I think is a solution is that every woman says, I'm responsible. I need to develop myself, both my mindset and my skill set. And if we do that individually, then we come together as whole and not
Mm.
fractured version of ourselves. And that's how we move the needle forward.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm so happy you brought up the concept of boundaries because that's something I was planning on talking to you about. I feel like as women, that is one of the hardest things that we deal with, and it's on a kind of micro level, a macro level, within the family, out of the family, within ourselves, because it seems almost like there's our feminine energy is warmth and loving and giving and receiving and kind of both of those energies for our kids. And so it's like, where do we decide to draw the line, and how do we enforce that as this is me, this is this is my line, and you can't come this way, but I'm not going to go this way, right? So how do you teach how to communicate those boundaries to kids or spouses or whoever?
Great question. So one of the issues that is challenging is because the boundary skill hinges on all the other skills. And here's what I mean. In order for you to communicate your line, you first need to just know what you want and don't want as a skill set. You need to be constantly thinking, what do I want and what do I not want? How many women today are trained to process what they want and don't want? As a matter of fact, one of the trainings that I have, the first things that we do with women is to actually go through every part of their life and say, what do you want and don't want? And I can tell you that's triggering because it's a muscle that's been in atrophy. Some women just freeze. Like January, I've never asked myself what I want to want. Some women just weep. Like, I have never given myself permission. Some women are angry. Like, why does it matter what I want? Because they're what they want and they want it never mattered. So boundaries hinges on your communication to actually say no to yourself. Like, you know what? I will not tolerate you raising your voice to me. No, thank you. Like, you have to own, so you have to almost know your standards. That's a skill in itself to be able to say, these are my standards in my friendship, in my relationship, in my motherhood, in my career. Like, that's a skill in itself. The ability to make a decision. How many women suffer indecisiveness that leads to anxiety? I don't know what to do. Should I tell him? Should I not? That's a skill in itself. So my point in saying this is that boundary, the skill of boundary hinges on all the other skills, which what makes boundary challenging. Does that make
Mm,
sense?
it
Because
totally
there's
does.
so it's like a puzzle piece. Where does one start and one begin? So that's number one. Number two, boundary also hinges primarily on our ability to communicate effectively. So I believe we lack scripts. We don't know what to say and we don't know how to say it. So let me give you an example. I, you're not allowed to speak to me that way. We actually we fumble on our words. And this is why in the women's school we have thousands of scripts. Like I have to give you because in our culture we have no script, so we have no arsenal. And so we're trying to figure out boundaries, but we don't know what to say and we don't know how to say it. So 7% are words, 38% tonality, and 55% body language. So not only do I not have words to say, you may not speak to me that way. I don't know how to say it that conveys the level of seriousness. I mean, I'll say, can you not say it that way? Please don't treat me that way. No, you may not treat me that way. That is unacceptable. What you can say is, but you may not do that. Whoever, our children or our spouse. So it's a scripting issue. It's an effective communication issue. I teach boundaries as a two-part. It's knowing your line, but then also communicating your line. So you see how it's so connected? Because you could have boundaries, and then women are like, "Well, people are not honoring my boundaries," but it could be that you don't have the right tonality. And so people that then they'll say, "Well, people don't honor my boundaries." I'm like, "Show me how you communicated that." Because we also our attitude gets communicated that determines people's response to us. See how connected it is? I know. It's like
It's very and so it's interesting. I happen to have this post-it note on my desk. I got it out because I took a picture of it and I was sending it to a friend who needed a little bit of guidance, and it just kind of it resonates with what we're talking about. So I thought I would give it to you what's on here because I once was speaking with an intervention coach about an intervention that I needed to be part of, and so what it says is breakdown equals conviction equals clarity equals courage equals change. And so a lot of times what happens is a woman who has no boundaries will
yeah,
literally let it go so far and so long that she then gets to the point of having to have basically a breakdown. But that breakdown then inspires conviction and says, hey, this isn't going to work anymore. She gets clear, gets that clarity of what that boundary is. She finally then gets the courage and then she can change. But ideally, we don't want it to ever have to get to this
sure,
right.
sure.
So I love what you're saying just about we need training on this because we're not wired this way, and especially if we didn't have a mom who role modeled this for us, because I always say the moms are the teachers and that's where the kids usually learn this kind of behavior or not learn it. And so I think
Mm.
I don't know, what are your thoughts about my
Well,
little
well, it's a great quote. I think, where my mind goes is like, how many skills does that woman need to even not come to that point? And
yeah.
even when she came to a point of courage, what skill does she need to even execute the conviction to say what she needs to say? That's where my mind goes because I think we've got a lot of these vague concepts, even in our culture, and it's no longer sufficient. Like, let's empower women. What does that even mean? Like, empowerment without equipping them with practical skills is delusional. Like,
Right.
you can't just say, you can do it. Go for your dreams. You're enough. I'm like, if you're not neurologically training them with the right mindset and skill set, they're going to go and be empowered for 5 minutes, and they're going to go back into binge into their Netflix and question and doubt their self-worth, and then go to their boss and try to please improve, and go to the next guy that tells them they're beautiful, or they're going to try to please their kids and not actually discipline them and hold them accountable. I mean, motherhood to me, like if you don't know your value and you don't have the skills, it's so easy to cater to our children's emotion to a point that we become a victim to their negative and I would say, immature emotion instead of actually leading. I'll give you an example. Like, in my house, I have illegal words. Why? Because language shape culture. Language shapes our thought. It shapes the way we think about things. And so I have a script book in my drawer, and my kids have written hundreds, some of them 1,000 scripts to rewire their brain because I have to hold them accountable to a level of standard in the words that they use in my own home before it even escalates to mom, she did this and she did this and she called me this. I'm like, if we never even allowed it to begin with, there wouldn't be she did this, and the infighting. If there was a standard of language that says, no, you're not allowed to use the word annoying because you could use that to your sibling. Now, your sibling, one of the biggest cause of therapy is actually sibling damage and the language that we use for each other, or we words are so powerful that they, then the way they're speaking to each other. And so that's like an example of, how as mothers, if we don't know the power of words that shape our thought and communicating that as a culture in our home, we could be fighting our children could be fighting, they could be having a lot of drama in their school if we only taught the basic of giving them some of the foundational skills. It wouldn't escalate to that point. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, I was training my 8-year-old. It's funny. I was my 8-year-old then. She's now 13, but we were practicing right before school, and people are gonna have opinions of you, and we have the script in our home. Your opinion of me is not my opinion of me. So we were rehearsing it
Mhm.
prior to school starts, and then later
Mhm.
on, she told me like a couple months later, and I forgot that we were doing it because I do it with my children. And she's like, "Oh, mom, this guy bothered me," and she was telling me the story. I was like, "Are you upset? What do you want? What did you do about it?" She goes, "Don't worry, mom. His opinion of me is not my opinion of me." And she just went on, not even like a thought. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I teach 56-year-old women, but it rolled out of her like it was nothing, but because she just needed how to manage those situation. But here's a question I have for you: how many mothers are incapable because we're not trained to train their children with the right script and mindset to convey that so that they won't come to a point where somebody is bullying them, somebody's telling them, and they're inheriting the labels that they're carrying. And moms, we don't know everything that's going on in school. They're just carrying it. Oh, you're so ugly, you're so FAT, you're so SCPID, but we're not there to police those words. And if we just even that's a one skill, like one script, and we have thousands of them in the women's school, your opinion of me is not my opinion of me, could release them from years of therapy or feeling like their label is that they're not enough or that they're FAT, that would damage your self-worth. My point is like, if we don't give them the skills, then our children are at risk of being manipulated, being, um, I would say, bullied, and then we're doing everything good at home. Like we're trying to be the best mom, but it's no longer enough. We need to give them skills because it's not just about what we offer them, it's about equipping them because the world has gone mad.
Mhm.
And in a world
Mhm.
that's gone mad, I feel like it's outright war. You need to equip your children with the skills that are crucial for survival, mental survival.
Mhm.
And this is why a lot of
Mhm.
our kids are, they're suffering anxiety and stress. And like that's another illegal word in my house, stress and anxiety. I'm like, what you focus on expands, And so they know not to use that word, my 16-year-old. And that's not that they won't use it. They just know that there's a standard of communication. And I think that's what we need to do, Lauren. That's what we need to do as mothers. Otherwise, how are we going to solve the problem? How are we ever going to tell them that motherhood is full of life and joy and that it can be healthy and it can be so fulfilling?
Mhm. Yeah.
It's not the death of our dreams. It's a matter of fact, the expansion of our dreams. Because we should never look at our children and say, you're the reason I stopped dreaming. Can you imagine? What have we wired into our children? You're the reason I dreamt even harder. You're the reason I expanded my dream and I trained even harder because dreaming comes before discipline.
Mm.
It's the dream that fuels a life of discipline. Where do you learn this as a mother? It's a shame.
Yeah,
I know.
it
I'm
is.
passionate about it. That's what we do
It
in the
is, I
women's
can
school.
tell, and I just love just, you're kinda just flooding me even with like, wow, I feel like I've just learned a lot of these things in the past, 5 or 6 years, but my oldest daughter's almost 16, so all the years that I wasn't training her, because I didn't have the skills, right?
Sure.
And so, but it's never too late, and as soon as we start to learn these, then we can impart these, and I feel like that's what I've been doing, but I feel like you've been doing this for such a long time. It's just incredible. And so, one thing I did want to get back to is you mentioned that when you're in college, your mentor, the second thing she taught you was to have a routine.
Mhm.
So, I thought we could talk a little bit about that. Like, what does it take to build a routine, and what does your routine look like?
Oh, so it's a two-part question. So to build a routine, it hinges on all the other skills like we talk about, right? So boundaries, mind management, so that itself. So for me, I think without a routine, we suffer. We could get away with one child without a routine, but I think two children becomes really inconsistent. So I think you have to make a choice in how you parent, and everybody can do it differently. I think, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, a rhythm of life is necessary for peace. And the reason why I say that is because I'm selling people on routine before I tell you what a routine looks like, is because, when you make 35,000 decisions a day and you don't have a rhythm of life and you're trying to figure out what's next, because there's no accountability of what comes next that's ordered, by the time 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock comes around, you're mentally exhausted. You have no time to train your children, no time to connect with your children because you're just responding all day.
Right.
So that's the number one. Number two, I think sometimes people um, get hung up on routine because they think it's rigid. And I always say routine is a rhythm. It's not like 10:01. There's a systematic order towards your day that everybody knows when to eat, when to sleep, when to work, so you know when to shower. Like moms was like, I don't ever know to shower. That tells me usually, I've been doing this thousands of times. I've trained hundreds of thousands of women that there's no order in their day because they don't know when to shower. And it's not their fault. Nobody trained them how. So my point in saying this is that our children sometimes get a bad reputation. They're just cranky, but really sometimes because there's no order towards their day. A children needs order for security, a rhythm. And so when our day is chaotic and we're responding all day, we just go here, and everything. They too are just sort of responding and they're exhausted and then they throw a tantrum. And then the other limiting belief about routine is that then your life is just so boring and rigid. When you have a rhythm of life, when you know when to eat, when to work out, when to exercise, when to take care of yourself, you can be more spontaneous because you don't feel guilty about it. So I think that I need to first address the mindset behind a routine.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, are you asking me personally what my routine is?
Yeah, I'm really
Okay.
curious.
So my routine, I've been a morning person. I've been a 4:30 a.m. girl since. And even between babies, I love a period. One of the things that I do is that I don't do believe in necessarily crying out, but I train my babies to sleep through the night from the hospital through a 3-hour cycle. So all my children, 12 hours by 12 weeks. So I used to teach that class. Um, so that is a big component though, because some women don't want to do that. And that's totally fine. Some women want to do, maybe sleep in their bed. I don't, we don't. And so they're with me for 12 weeks and then I transition them out. So that's just a little caveat. So um I get up at 4:30 in the morning where I have time for prayer. I have time for study. I study every day as a woman. I study myself, but I also study, I study so much of culture. And then my children get up about 7 o'clock. They know that they come down at 7. And some of my boys are up at 6:30, and then I'll stop what I'm doing. I still have a 3 and a 4-year-old. So that's what my morning looks like. And then from 7 to 8 o'clock, my older children prepare for school. I have full-time live-in help because I obviously run a big operation, a big company. Um, so that to me is my investment. And that's why I invested after 4 children to do that so that I can actually have more time with my children. I don't I don't I don't believe in this I am woman, hear me roar. I don't need help. I can do it all by myself. I think it's delusional and it's causing women to be sick. It's a false understanding of a strong woman. So I have help so that I can be with my children during this time. I'm investing in them. I'm helping them. I also train my children to be quite competent. We do it with a lot of Montessori. Confidence comes from competence. So we train in the school. So they'll know how to make their own lunches and how to dress themselves. They know that they're capable. So study kind of their development and their capacity and build skill after skill. So 7 to 8, and then so between 7 and 9, I'm literally just with my children because my two little boys are they don't start school till 9. There's times that I have like a training or something that's due. I'll leave at 8 a little earlier, but for the most part, I'm there till 9. And so then I go to work, and my life is simple. What I mean by that, I know I work from 9 to 3, and I'll put everything in that time. 9 to about 4:30. My my children come home at 3:30, so I try to really be there by 3:30. But if sometimes I have podcasts in the afternoon or something, I'll be there by 4:30. I make dinner because my husband likes it when I make dinner. I am very selective about what I say yes to and I say no to, which is part of my routine is my ability to prioritize what's important, what's really not important. And, my 2 boys, which they're home by 1, so they're not with me for a couple hours a day till I come home, which is part of my call right now. But I'm with them in the morning and I'm with them in the evening. When I head home, I'm home. Like I don't, you know, my husband runs the company, so we'll kind of take turns. He's fully present. So from 4, I'll cook with my children. I'll spend time with them, and then dinner is sacred. My children will have to get permission if they're not joining with dinner. My older children. I live in a town where everything's kind of consolidated. We move for the town. You know, not everybody has that luxury. But I'm also very limited with my children. I'm like, you do one sport, if not none. Family is more important than sports. Unless you really are going for the high, like my oldest son's 16, he's training for to be a professional golfer. He homeschools. So he competes. So he homeschools every day. He homeschools, but he also plays golf every day. That's an exception, you know. So sometimes he won't be home for dinner because he plays golf till whatever 7, and golf is like 7 hours a day, 6 hours a day. So that's my routine. And then dinner is sacred. I'll cook and then we'll clean and then it's family time. And then I put the kids to bed at 8, 9. My husband's home and I spend time with my kids. Lights out at like 9:30. Sometimes it's a little later, so I get about 7 hours of sleep. I should get 8. Um, but I can function with 7, sometimes 6 if I so there's a bit of a dance, but that's really my and if I have speaking engagement of something, I can pivot it, but my children know they're also very consistent in their routine. I hold them to a standard. They know what to expect at home. So my children, they know it's like, "Okay, how did you contribute today in the house?" It's like, "No, you don't live in this, like, border. I'm not a hotel." So they're like, "Mom, I contributed. I made sure I did da 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 da." And then sometimes I need my older children to watch the younger children, spend time with them, you know? And so they're like, they know it. They're like, "Mom, I'll take the 1 to 3 hour if I need to for some reason I'm out of town, and I'll take the 6 to 8." So they'll know. So that's really kind of our routine, and my husband obviously does it with me, so we can kinda tag team. But I guess the key is simplicity and less is more.
Yeah.
Does that answer the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, it did. And what stuck out to me was that kind of like the whole family knows the routine. So if the older ones are watching the younger ones, they automatically know what to do because they know what time of day it is. They know what happens at that time of day. So you're right. It does seem like really, just a well oiled machine. And I think the last thing I want to just really try to understand from you is what's making such a statement to me, and I have a feeling to the moms listening, is just your level of conviction just in your entire process, in your entire life. Like, I am so ready to just kind of jump on board with your kind of way of life, your way of doing things. So, like, where does that come from? Because I can tell it's very internal, and I've heard you say multiple times is mindset and skill set. And so it's almost like you have programmed yourself, but like, where did you find the energy to even do that?
Oh, it's a great question. My wound, and that's a simple answer. I think our wound becomes a compass to our conviction and contribution. I never had a home growing up. My parents were immigrants. My first awareness was in the slums with my grandfather. My parents were good. It's just that they had to work hard. It was a different time. Um, so I didn't have my parents, 7 to 11 years old. And then my parents came to the United States to be housekeepers. And so we live in a different house. And so to me, the home life was non existent. I didn't even know what a living room was. Like nobody ever tucked me in. Um, I, I remember I would pray. I used to have this image of myself in my sheets, 3, 4 years old. I would pray by myself. I would tuck myself in. And so I think so much of what I suffered for because nobody showed me how. And so I think I've used all my suffering in a way that's redemptive and say, if I could help one woman and say, you're nothing is wrong with you, you're just underskilled. A lot, that's who I was. I was a good girl who suffered unnecessarily, made some poor choices that had repercussions in my life because nobody showed me how. And so my conviction comes from my wound, but also from the women who trained me. Like, if they were not there to invest in me, I would be a hot mess woman, forget mom. I don't know where I would be. So that to me is the two sort of dichotomy of not having it and to nothing special about who I am, but that somebody just showed me how. So to me, I feel my conviction comes from, I would say, my obligation, my privilege, and what I'm accountable for. Like, I want everyone to see here that motherhood is so beautiful. It's rich, it's fulfilling. You have hard days, but they're not hard life. You don't wait till your children, but you have to be skilled. Otherwise, it is going to be overwhelming and hard. And so to me, I want to redeem how we view motherhood as not only that we give life, but we breathe life. Breathe comes from the word inspire, that we inspire life to our children because there's life within. And we can't give from a place where we're just trying to get through because what's costing us as mothers is that we have abandoned our life only to be resentful, only to be angry, only to be numb. And what does that do? It then gives our children a perception of motherhood or stress or anxiety. Now it's become generational. So my conviction comes from both my wound and really a deep gratitude. And I feel like my call. And so I I don't know. I always tell my husband, if I die tonight, I've done everything that I could to fulfill my God-given call and serve women because I wake up every day convicted about what I do. But I've also seen the fruit of it in my own family. Like I know that it works. My family's not perfect. There's, but I know that it can be beautiful and rich and peaceful and ordered. That our marriage doesn't have to be sacrificed because of motherhood, that our marriage should be enriched because of motherhood and vice versa. And but I've also seen the thousands of testimonies of women who've gone through our schools and say, "Oh, I just thought something's wrong with me. I just needed this skill." And what it boils down to is wholeness. Every part of us matters. And if we are whole, we're capable of giving from a cup that is full without compromising the very thing that matters to us, who we are.
Mhm.
And that's why,
Mm.
so much of reclaiming womanhood in modern society is about really introducing a new woman that is a whole version of herself, a whole version of a mother. And that's our mission.
That's beautiful. And the perfect way to say, how can people find the woman's school?
Yeah, so if you go to januarydonovan.com on Instagram, or you can also go to thewomenschool.com. We just launched the Women's School Community, SKOOL, that I do practical life training, live training. And kind of where I will be investing my time. So join us. And if you're interested in joining our foundational course that's brought us to 40 countries, I believe in this work so much, I'm convicted. Um, Join us a 16-week journey, although it is about 6 months, and it's deep interior work, the foundation, what I believe of how to be a woman in modern time. You can just learn about the new one masterclass in our website. But I'm going to go even further. If anybody out there who's been, I want to coach women on a life of wholeness and reclaiming womanhood, we also have a wholeness coaching program if you want to make money, and we have women that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars reclaiming womanhood without having to leave. A lot of mothers are actually doing it because they don't have to leave their home, and they're doing such fulfilling work, and they don't have to create anything because all the classes are created for them. They facilitate the work, it's meaningful work, and it's financially very beneficial. And then they're training their children because they're learning all these skill sets. So if anybody's interested, that's where you can also find me.
Okay, well, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much, January. I so appreciate your time. And this was just, I mean, I feel energized right now. I just want to say, like, everything, it just kind of poured out of you and into me. And I feel kind of like so curious and ready to tackle everything in my life now. So thank you for the inspiration.
Thank you. Thank you for being open to it. I'm really grateful.
Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.